As the debate continues to rage over the electronic transmission of results, it has emerged that in 2018, a joint technical committee of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, had met and made recommendations for the adoption of electronic transmission of results ahead of the 2019 general elections. After deliberations by the committee, co-chaired by the NCC Executive Commissioner for Technical Services, Ubala Maska, and Muhammed Lucky, and INEC National Commissioner, the committee had recommended data communication service from mobile network operator, otherwise known as the MNOs, as the practical solution that provides wide-range coverage of INEC polling units. The committee further noted that the data communication services guaranteed more secure end-to-end connectivity, as well as election results confidentiality. And according to the report of the committee, on the option of traditional data communication services, the MNOs confirmed that they have delivered similar services using this option to other ministries, departments, and agencies in the country in the recent past. Curiously, just last week, the same Maska of the NCC contradicted himself when he informed the House of Representatives that electoral coverage analysis conducted in 2018 by the Commission showed that about 50% of the polling units had 3G and 2G network services, while 49% had 2G network and below. Mr. Maska posited that a 3G network was required to transmit results electronically, with the NCC approbating and reprobating at an alarming rate. Well, we are now being joined by the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, Gbenga Adebayo, to get his expert opinion on mobile data coverage in the country and the capacity of the MNOs to provide data communication services for the electronic transmission of results. Good morning, Mr. Gbenga, and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. And good to see you again. Well, I mean, Adesua has already explained what the concerns are. Is it that the telecom operators of Nigeria, or if you like, the mobile network operators, MNOs, need a special kind of technology to be able to assist INEC to transmit data? Data in this regard does not involve video, it's just ordinary SMS. And in 2018, as Adesua pointed out in that introduction, there was some kind of conclusion, agreement, resolution between the NCC and INEC that it was indeed possible to transmit results electronically. And now all of a sudden, the NCC, represented by, what is that man's name again? Maska, is reprobating and approbating and saying it is no longer possible because some places do not have 3G, at a time when we've been told that some MNOs now provide us with 4G services. And it doesn't mean that you cannot transmit SMS, ordinary SMS, even if it is 2G. You are the man in the industry. Please
Thank you.
Help us out.
The various generations explains the capacity and the speed of delivery. First, the basic phone is the first G, which is basically voice and voice only. The second G delivers voice and text messages. And then the third generation delivers voice, data, and video. And what we do know is that if you will send encrypted information, it's more reliable sending that over the third generation network than it is on the second generation or the first generation. Now, our association is non-political, so we're unable to comment on political issues. But what we do know is technology and capacity. And in the circumstances of what is being discussed, if they are looking to send reliable data at high speed with very minimal latency, it's best done on the third generation than on the second generation. I think that's what is important.
Well, No. I don't think you have answered the question. In 2018, it was agreed that it was possible to transmit results electronically. Now, this time around, what the NCC representative is saying is different from what INEC is saying. What exactly is the problem? Do we have the technology to transmit results from polling booths electronically?
If in 2018 discussions were around availability of service, yes, the answer would be yes, that electronically it's possible to transmit. It also depends on what kind of information do they want to transmit. You can send text messages using 2G. If you want to send high-speed data and encrypted video, you need 3G to do so. So if in 2018 a survey was conducted, technology was not a consideration, or type or mode of data to be transmitted was not a consideration. Yes, it was right to say that in 2018 they can transmit this information. But if now the contention is what kind of technology is required, what kind of encryption is required on the signals to information to be transmitted, then you begin to talk about the availability of certain grade of service or the other. If they will require to send such by simple text message, you can do that on the 2G. If you require to send it by limited SMS, you can do that on the 2G. But if you require encrypted information at high speed with minimal latency and at very high reliability, the recommendation will be to use a 3G network. And in terms of availability of service, yes, we do have point of presence across the country. We do have point of presence across most of all the polling booths around the country. But the fact remains that if you want to send certain information that is secured and encrypted, then you need to be concerned about technology. And I think that's what has come to play here.
You seem to speak as though you are not part of these conversations and deliberations. So let me ask you, what is the level of engagement or involvement of your association in these ongoing talks, and especially prior to the 2019 general elections, because from the information, the MNOs were also involved. So what is your level of engagement? And speaking of the required technology, should they need to transmit higher, what's the terminology, frequency or data, bigger data, or to transmit across the country? And you said they will need 3G. What will it take to scale up in the country from now till the next general elections in 2023?
Again, let me say that because we are non-political, we are unable to comment on political issues. So the discussion with INEC and the NCC at the time, we are not part of that conversation, and we will not be, because those are issues that has to do with policy, regulation, and politics. Now, the fact remains that if you want to send information over the mobile network, it is possible to send it on any platform. It now depends on what kind of security and safety you are looking for. So if the discussion today with INEC is to say we need to send information at a certain grade, at a certain speed, at a certain time of the day with certain content and all that, then technology becomes a consideration. And I think what is the main issue is that, are we present across the country? The answer is yes. Is 2G available across the country? The answer is yes. Can you send some form of data on 2G and on 3G? The answer is yes. But what kind of information do you require to send? Then you begin to worry about technology and availability of such across the country.
Okay, please stay with us, Mr. Adebayo, but before we come back to you and Rufai asks his question, we have reports indicating that Yoruba nationalist activist and agitator Chief Sunday Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday Igboho, has been arrested in Benin Republic. The Department of State Services is yet to confirm the reports making the rounds in the media at the moment. But that's what's been reported, in many places. So the breaking news is the reported arrest of Chief Sunday Adeyemo, popularly known as Sunday Igboho. Before now, there have been a notice put out there asking the immigration services and customs and other agencies at the various borders to look out for Chief Sunday Adeyemo, who, it was said, may have been making plans to head out to a foreign country. So that's the latest information. We'll keep a briefing watch on that, a watching brief, and then we'll bring you more information as we get more details.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bati. Good to see you again, Mr. Gbenga Adebayo. It's a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. So 2 things I'd like to ask. Number 1, in that meeting between INEC and NCC, they talked about 118,000 polling units out of 119,000 polling units. That's just to talk about the spread of what they can transmit. The case has always been, as we all know, that the information transmitted will be probably text. It's just the numbers of the various political parties in the polling units. I'm not sure that incident reports that might need a video capture is attached to it. So it's just text. Can you confirm for me 2 things? Number 1, Out of the 774 local governments, can you confirm for me how many terminals, and I mean terminals in the sense of telecoms poles, that have 2 or 3G networks? Can you confirm for me? Is there a spread? Out of 774 local governments, like how many are we going to have?
Again, on the issue of capacity.
No, I'm still coming, sir. Let me land. So that's one. Secondly, can you confirm for me the capacity of speed, to transform text? Because predominantly what it will be text. If you have other issues like incident report and the likes, there are other measures to document those ones and to transmit those ones. So largely this will be text to just a nucleated server system. So can you confirm for me, the speed at which this can be done across all the units, you have, and the terminals or the base stations? Just 2 things, sir.
First, you need a minimum of 2G to send text information. You need a minimum of 2G. Now, in the conversation around sending election results, I'm not sure that it was only text that was in the conversation. I'm not sure. And at the meeting between NCC and INEC, because we weren't part of that meeting, I won't be able to speak to the agreement or discussions that were held at that time. But I do know that where you have 2G network, you are able to send text information, but under the circumstances of this conversation, I am not sure that what they are talking about is text only. If it be text only, I don't see a problem. But if you say that they need to deliver election result, they have to send photographic information, they have to send image evidence, they have to spend video clips and all that. Certainly it's not possible on the 2G. They will require 3G to do so.
No.
In terms of presence at country, yes, 2G is present in all areas where we have coverage, but 3G is not present in all areas. As we have seen in the data, about half of the national network is covered by 3G. So the remaining is not covered by 3G. And if their requirement is for a minimum speed deliverable on the 3G, certainly the narration is right that we may not be able to.
Okay, so how many areas have 2G? What's the spread like? What's the number of points where you have 2G? And how many areas have 3G as we speak now?
In terms of statistics, about 51% thereabout has 3G, and 49% thereabout has only 2G coverage. In terms of statistics, that's the number that the NCC has given to the public.
And what's the threshold of improvements? Is this something we can improve upon? I know there's a national broadband plan on ground. Is this something we can improve upon in the next 2-3 years? Because you will agree with me that teledensity did increase tremendously over a space of a 5-year threshold. So if we can activate this quickly, is it something we can improve upon, and the MNOs too can be champions on this?
Certainly, yes. And you see, it speaks to a bigger issue of capacity and expansion. It speaks to a bigger issue of that. Our industry is not fully consolidated. For us to have robust national network where you have capacity present at all places and at all times, we need to expand the networks. We need more investment in the sector. We need more access to site build. We need more reduction in the cost of right of way and other charges by agencies of state. So this issue of capacity speaks to a much, much bigger issue. What will interest you is that sometimes it's cheaper to buy capacity between London and Lagos than it is to buy bandwidth between Lagos and some part of the upper state of the country. Because of the availability of capacity and power, we are unable to lay fiber to deliver massive capacity. We are unable to connect cell site to the backbone because of the high cost of deploying right of way. Activities of state government is disruptive of smooth operations of services. As I speak with you today, we have a case in some states somewhere in the eastern part of the country where 2 days ago, revenue collection agents of government sealed up 2 telecom sites. Those sites are hub sites powering about 9 other sites, so we have disruption of services in those areas. So if you have all of these issues, service guarantee becomes a problem. Capacity remains a major issue. In times past, before the current regime of 145 kobo for right of way to lay fiber optics, cost of right of way alone could be as high as 60-70% of the entire cost of the infrastructure built. And it is so because agents of government, particularly at the state and local government, they see telecom as source of IGR. And by this, they put all kinds of taxes and levies against the operators. If it is not paid, they go to seize site and to lock up site. And the problem that we do have in terms of slow deployment is this barrier to deployment. Unless these barriers are eliminated, it will be difficult. But certainly, if all stakeholders agree together to pull together between now and the next year or thereabouts, we certainly can ramp up capacity very quickly and bring to bear what is required in those stations that are currently on 2G and lower technologies.
Well, Mr. Adebayo, yes, I like that your last statement, because for the better part, you've been talking about what the NCC representative said when he appeared before the National Assembly. A law is not made for the moment. It's made for what is possible in order to ensure good governance. Now, as somebody in the telecom industry, what would be your advice to the National Assembly? Will you say that it would be a wise thing to pass that clause under Section 52 of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill as proposed, and then for government to work towards upgrading those areas where 3G, as you called it, will be required? And what will be required really? What do we need to do to make sure that there will be proper coverage between now and 2023 to ensure that electronic transmission is possible in Nigeria? Or it's something that is impossible? Or do you think this is not about technology? What we're dealing with really is perhaps politics. I asked you the question about politics because you're also a citizen and you have a stake in the matter.
Okay, on my mission here today, I'm not able to comment on political issues. I will only be able to speak about capacity.
No, why not? You are free. You are not restricted.
I won't be able to because we don't represent any political interest or group, but I'll be able to speak to the reality of capacity as
but
it
you
exists
can
today.
speak as a citizen, as a Nigerian.
To the best I can, I will. But in terms of the current conversation around election results and deliveries and all that, I will not be able to comment on issues that are policy. So if you ask me to speak to a specific section of the clause of the Act, I won't be able to speak to that. However, in terms of deployment and in terms of capacity, what is required, I would not say to the Parliament, do or don't do. I won't say so. I will not say to the regulator, do or don't. I will not. But I say as stakeholders, all of us must pull together to ensure that we bring to bear the right capacity that is required to have the right technology at all places and at all times. That's what I would say. As an industry, we need to continue to invest, and government must continue to encourage investors in our sector. That's number one. As policymakers, they must consider policies that will motivate further investment and further expansion of capacity across the country. Stakeholders at different levels of government must take responsibility. They should not continue to see telecom services as a cash cow and therefore revenue collection aimed at service providers. When they are not paid, they go to seal up telecom sites and all that. That should not happen. As stakeholders, we must agree together that we need to bring capacity to bear to support government. We need to bring capacity to bear to bring the right technology in places, and we need to ensure that between now and the time that is so required, whatever is needed to have the right capacity deployed, both on the side of the players and on the side of government, that we do our part so that we can have it. Because we're talking about it today, it's something that will come to be in a matter of time. Technology is something that we cannot run away from. So whether it's electoral, electronic vote transfer, electronic voting and the rest of it, at some point in time, that will be something that has to be done. And the earlier we start to work towards that, I think the better for all the stakeholders actually.
Well, let's talk about something that is also a challenge or a problem that has been highlighted by the lawmakers, hacking, the security risk that comes with this. How serious of a threat is that should we go ahead with this electronic transmission of results in the country?
Well, in terms of our national network, we have no firewalls to protect the national network. We have no firewalls and systems in place to protect data, to protect citizens and all that. But again, there is no system that has 100% security actually. And hackers are traders in it. It is their occupation. They are also very smart at what they do. But these are things that we do on a continuous basis. You can't come to a point where you say you have built enough firewalls and you go to sleep. It's something that we continue to build and respond to on a daily basis. So in terms of guarantee, I can assure the public that our national network is secure. So far, and very luckily, so we have not had any case of hacking onto our national network, and that speaks to the integrity of what we have put in place. But to say that it cannot happen in future, I can't come on national television and say it will never happen. So we need to continue to work at it actually.
Okay, so in all of this, can I also just take me through this? So is there a possibility of using an ancillary satellite network, sort of like what we apply on the UAE satellite network like Turaya, to be able to transmit results from those areas which your networks cannot cover? Or is there a possibility that maybe specifically for the elections, you can have sort of like a booster station that retransmits 2G signals, or that will embolden the signals to about 3G signals? I mean, those are just two scenarios I've been able to put down. And thirdly, I mean, just for personal curiosity, I want to know the threshold of coverage for 4G. Then I want to know the update as regards the work being done on 5G. I hear tests are going on. And what's going to be the coverage threshold like when that's finally deployed? So two things.
All right. If you want to introduce some form of hardware, like what we call, you call it now signal boosters, I would say interfaces, to upgrade from a 2G to deliver service on 3G, it's a possibility. But the thing there is that the more the hardware you have in between, the higher the risk of failure, and also the higher the risk of disruption. In terms of usage of Suraya and the like of a satellite phone to transmit this data, you worry about security on those platforms because, again, those are grant to art to grant services. So you worry about safe security of the data and the integrity of the information you are sending. And also latency could be high on those applications. Now 3G here will give you real-time, real speed, and highly secured and all that. So one will not be able to speak to a large extent as to the security of the integrity of data sent on such platforms like the satellite network like you are proposing, particularly for high secured information like what we are talking about. But technically it's a possibility. Now, on the availability of 4G, the progress we made on 4G, largely 4G is available in most of the tier 1 cities across the country. Again, we are putting in more capacity to ensure that we bring more cities on board of 4G. 3G is available in more than half of the national network. Again, we are doing a lot more to bring more capacity, more stations from 2G to 3G. So it's still a lot of work in progress. And in terms of 5G, as you are aware, the Ministry of Communications and also the NCC, what they have done is to do some form of proof of concept. We haven't had commercial launch of that. I'm aware that frequencies are now up for auction and all that. So we haven't done much on 5G. We haven't had any commercial launch of 5G, but it's something that will happen. And let me also remind the public that this technology changes from time to time. So times past, it was 1G, 2G, 3G, and 4G, now 5G. Some countries are already talking about 6G. There are things that will happen. And just as a country, we need to prepare for it by deploying the right infrastructure, ensure that we have secured network, ensure that we have availability of service and capacity for all citizens at all times. But the good thing is that given that we operate one national network, I think in terms of coverage, the performance is not bad. I think we're not bad. In terms of technology, we still need to do a bit more. In terms of investment, we need a lot more in the sector. And we're on the right track. Slowly but rightly, we will get there.
But those ground to earth, real quickly, they afford a level of encryption. And when you look at the categorization of the data that is to be sent, the encryption should be able to cover it, because when you look at, the ground to air-to-ground satellite and things like that, like Turas and they offer some level of encryption. And it's not that it's a very cumbersome data set, as it were. And, the possibility of the booster stations that you've alluded to, too, they can be what will ensure that this electronic transmission of results really goes smoothly because, you're upsetting the apple cart, and it can also deepen the telecom system and deepen the tele-density of those areas.
Well, before you respond, Mr. Adebayo, something gives me the impression that in the course of this conversation, you've been trying to be very careful with the NCC. I hope that's not because the NCC is the regulator of the industry that you belong to. Because now we have two things. You have INEC, speaking through Festus Okoye, the director in charge of voter education, saying, look, INEC can transmit results electronically. They did it in Edo State gubernatorial elections. He says they've done it in some other places. So what is it that INEC is aware of, that INEC knows, that INEC is confident about, that all of a sudden NCC, that the National Assembly wants to give the powers to control the electoral process along with the National Assembly. What is it that NCC knows that INEC does not know?
Well, you see, on the narration around transmission of election results, we need to be a bit careful about it. In the first instance, if you want to send text-only information, we have said that that will not be a problem. But if you see the responsibility of data protection and data security to a third party, in this case, you expose a party that doesn't have core mandate on a particular assignment to take responsibility for that, and that introduces a different line of problem entirely. The reason being that if INEC says they want to send a result by text only, that's not a problem. We will deliver a result by text only, but do not hold the industry responsible, so to say, for latency, for delays, for undelivered messages, and all of that. And we say that because of the integrity of the information that is being transmitted, we guarantee that services signals are better delivered over the 3G network than the 2G network. And that is the conversation. So if it is just you want to send a text message, you can send that on 2G, you can send that on 3G. But if you are sending highly secured information at the right speed and at the right time and with the right content undisrupted, in some cases you even need to have some degree of encryption for data integrity, then we need to talk about certain type of technology, which in this case will not be the 2G, but to be the 3G. So whether NCC is aware of something and INEC is not aware, INEC says, I want to deliver text message. NCC says, I can deliver it to you, but I deliver it at the right speed and at the right security and encryption level, only possible on 3G. And I think that is the conversation. So if tomorrow INEC says this is the result, send it by text, so be it. But if you are looking at, say, any highly secured information that is protected and that is guaranteed and that is real time, in some cases text and video and data, then you need more than the 2G to do it. And I think that is the explanation on that. In terms of putting additional interfaces and or encryption, again, that's a possibility. But the more the hardware you have in between, the higher the risk of failure. We need to be aware of that. Number two is that the more the hardware you have in between, the higher the risk you have of interruption of the signals. That's another thing we need to think about. And also, the more the interfaces you consider to have, the more the encryption you consider to have, the higher the cost of delivering that service. Because again, if you come tomorrow to say, let them upgrade services with encryption devices or with booster, let them upgrade stations of 2G now to 3G for the purpose of delivering this result, then we start talking about budget and cost and all of that. And again, that will bring another round of conversation around who should pay for what, who should not pay for what. And I think the discussion is quite straightforward.
No,
you want to send text message, you send it by 2G or 3G. You want to send encrypted information, highly protected at higher speed, you require 3G. And that's what we're saying.
No, Mr. Adebayo, this conversation is not straightforward. Okay. I mean, Professor Atahiru Jega, who was head of INEC, has also said, look, if electronic voting is possible, electronic transmission of results is also possible. As a Nigerian, as a stakeholder, I get the impression that some people are lying to us. Now, who is telling the lie? We will find out in the fullness of time.
Well, your responses have been conditional. Perhaps let me read a paragraph from the communique from that joint committee between INEC and NCC before the 2019 election. It says, the Joint Technical Committee of the two bodies considered options including, please listen to this, there were 3 options. They included the national roaming, they included the multi-SIM, and lastly, the traditional communication service from mobile network operators to transmit results. However, they concluded that out of these 3, the best was the traditional communication service from mobile network operators to transmit results. So you're the man in the industry. What exactly does that mean in lay terms? To adopt, they said they concluded this was the best form, the traditional communication service from mobile network operators to transmit our election results. What does that mean?
It means to send it by text.
Exactly.
This is what I mean by, so I'm saying that if you are now talking about sending secure data.
So in simple words, Mr. Adebayo, not to complicate things, in simple words, if INEC and NCC, this is a communique from them, say this is what we adopted, what does that mean? Doesn't it then simply say we can do it?
Yeah, but I wasn't.
With available broadband and frequency, we can do it.
Not part of that conversation, so I cannot speak to what the intention of that conversation. I can't speak to that intention. But if from what you are reading now, I can say that the intent is to say send text message. Now, if they say we want to send this text message, but now encrypted, you need more than 2G. That's just what I'm saying.
Okay.
Do we need to encrypt it really?
Anyway.
Has to tell us. Because again, if you are sending election results, you need to send it at very high integrity.
Thank you.
And you need to be sure that it's not susceptible to any form of interference whatsoever for having the right integrity on the outcome of those results. So to send it by an open test, it can make the data vulnerable and all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adebayo. We'll keep focusing on the subject.